Hi, this is Remembering the Past, a show where we talk about people who've died recently who've had a profound effect on our history, our society, or our culture. Tonight we're going to start out with Bill Buckner, who died recently at the age of 69. He was the outfielder turned infielder for a number of teams, most notably the Dodgers, the Cubs, and the Red Sox. Very good player as an outfielder for the Dodgers, but then he hurt his knees, couldn't play the outfield much anymore, and was sent to the infield, where he played for the Cubs and the Red Sox. Excellent hitter, hard to strike out. Unfortunately, his career became defined by one play in Game 6 of the 1986 World Series. Here's ESPN on the death of Bill Buckner.
Over the course of a 22-year Major League Baseball career, Bill Buckner amassed an impressive resume of statistics. But his legacy is also defined by one costly mistake in October of 1986. Bill Buckner died Monday morning at age 69. Bill Buckner was known more for his hitting prowess than his defense, and his career numbers bear that out. Buckner was the National League batting champion in 1980, an all-star for the Chicago Cubs in 81. He finished his career with an impressive .289 batting average and over 2,700 hits. But all of Buckner's accomplishments are often overshadowed by a crucial error he made in Game 6 of the 1986 World Series. The Boston Red Sox led the New York Mets 3-2, with a chance to win Boston's first World Series since 1918. With the game tied in extra innings and Buckner playing first base for the Red Sox, Buckner allowed a ground ball to roll through his legs that let the winning run score for the Mets. The Mets went on to win the game and Game 7 and the World Series, further cementing the belief among baseball fans the Red Sox team was cursed. The relationship between Buckner and Red Sox fans was strained after that. Many fans viewed Bill Buckner as the focal point for another failed World Series chance and refused to forgive his error. It wasn't until a return to Fenway Park in 2008, after a second Red Sox World Series win in 4 seasons, that both Boston fans and Buckner himself were able to make amends for decades of animosity. One bad moment, however, does not outweigh one outstanding career.
He actually had Hall of Fame potential when he was with the Dodgers early in his career, but then the injuries caught up with him. The GOAT stuff is largely the creation of, well, let's say, the over-dramatization of the Boston and New York fans and media. The Red Sox did blow Game 6. They had 2 outs and nobody on and a 2-run lead in that Game 6. Calvin Schiraldi and Bob Stanley just couldn't get the final strike. I think there were 27 pitches where they could have ended the game. Manager John McNamara had no business having Buckner in the game. Should have had a defensive replacement, and Buckner couldn't bend down for balls at that point, so he shouldn't have been out there. I think McNamara wanted him to be able to celebrate the win. But by that time, they'd already blown the lead. The game was tied. If you look at it objectively on the scale of GOATs, Buckner shouldn't rate that high. Here's Vin Scully with that famous call.
Can you believe this ball game at Shea? Oh, brother. So the winning run is at second base with 2 out, 3-2 to Mookie Wilson. Little roller up along first, behind the bag. It gets through Buckner. Here comes Knight, and the Mets win it. If one picture is worth 1,000 words, you have seen about 1,000,000 words. But more than that, you have seen an absolutely bizarre finish to Game 6 of the 1986 World Series. The Mets are not only alive, they are well, and they will play the Red Sox in Game 7 tomorrow.
You knew the Red Sox weren't winning that Game 7. In fact, they blew a lead in that Game 2 in the earlier innings. We're going to move on now to James McCord, who died, well, he didn't die recently. He died 2 years ago at age 93, but he was a CIA agent for a long time, so he did everything mysteriously. When he left the CIA, he went to work for Richard Nixon on the committee to re-elect the president, otherwise known as CREEP, and he became the head of the burglary unit that burglarized the Watergate Hotel and started Watergate. Here is Matthew Bannister of BBC4 Last Word on James McCord.
Now, James McCord was the former CIA agent who played a key role in the Watergate affair that ultimately brought down President Nixon. McCord died as he had lived, in the shadows. His death happened 2 years ago, but has only recently been widely reported. The American journalist Michael Carlson told me more about James McCord's role in Watergate.
He led the group of 5 burglars who went into the offices of the Democratic National Committee in the Watergate building because, ostensibly, one of the microphones they had put in the offices a few weeks earlier wasn't functioning properly. And it was McCord who taped shut the locks on the doors that they entered through. Of course, it was the tape over the door latch which got the Watergate burglars caught.
We just didn't really want to proceed to jimmy or break another lock. We came to the back door and tried the handle, and the door was latched. Someone obviously had removed the tape.
The witness on the stand at the moment is James McCord, one of the 7 men convicted of breaking into the Democratic headquarters in Washington's Watergate building nearly a year ago. It was he who really broke open the whole scandal.
What did he face when it came to the legal proceedings?
Well, this is where it got really interesting. He kept quiet more or less until his first lawyer started telling him that his best defense would be to say the CIA had sent him. Now, McCord had left the CIA a few months before joining the committee to re-elect the president. He was having none of this. Eventually, he got a new lawyer, a guy called Bud Fensterwald, who's connected with a lot of these intelligence issues. And he said to his contacts in the Nixon White House that he had an awful lot of information that could make the trees fall, as he put it. And if Nixon were to go after or fire Richard Helms, the head of the CIA, he would make all that public. Well, that's indeed what happened. Helms got fired from the CIA. McCord then contacted Judge Sirica, who was the judge running the trial, and said he would make a confession. And in that confession, he named names going right into the White House.
The President of the United States was aware of our meeting, that the results of the meeting would be conveyed to the President, and that at a future meeting there would likely be a personal message from the President himself.
And that eventually led to the President's resignation on the eve of impeachment.
That's right.
The President is going to address the nation and presumably announce his resignation in half an hour from now.
Had McCord not talked, it's very doubtful whether all the investigations, the Woodward-Bernstein investigation, the Sam Ervin investigation in the Senate, Judge Sirica, it's really doubtful whether they would have actually been able to get the hard proof that would have been strong enough to force Nixon's resignation.
I must put the interests of America first. Therefore, I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow.
Well, let's talk a little bit then about James McCord's background. How did he get involved in the CIA in the first place?
He came, like a lot of people in the early years of the CIA, from the FBI. And one of the interesting things was at 18, after high school, he was actually working for the FBI in Washington, then joined the Air Force during World War II, and then joined the fledgling CIA in 1951.
At a secret base in the Guatemalan jungle, American CIA agents had been training Cuban exiles to invade Cuba.
Am I right in thinking that he was involved in the Bay of Pigs, the notorious Bay of Pigs operation in Cuba?
Yeah, the Bay of Pigs was an invasion by Cuban exiles who were supposedly going to use that as a stepping stone to overthrow Fidel Castro.
Supported by the CIA.
Supported by the CIA. In fact, completely engineered by the CIA. And McCord's role in the first invasion is a bit sketchy, but we know for sure that he and Howard Hunt were working together on what was going to be a second invasion, probably out of Nicaragua, and they were training troops. And it was when Kennedy sort of put the kibosh on that the real enmity between the Cuban exile community and Kennedy arose.
Does this link back to Watergate?
It does indeed, because one of the interesting lies that McCord told in his testimony was that he and Hunt had never met before, when in fact they had done a lot of work together, including with the Cuban exiles.
What sort of a character was McCord?
When you watch his Watergate testimony, he doesn't give a lot away.
Regarding technical devices and political matters pertaining to the forthcoming convention, it became apparent that he had an interest in several areas of intelligence gathering.
He was kind of a Better Call Saul, the kind of guy you called in when you had a real problem. His first big episode with the CIA was in 1953 when a man named Olson jumped out or was pushed out of the window of a hotel in New York while he was being interrogated about MK Ultra and other projects the CIA was doing with LSD. Olson either jumped or was pushed. McCord was the guy who went up from Langley, Virginia, and sorted everything out on behalf of the CIA and sorted it out very well. It was kept quiet for another 30 years.
And what was McCord's role in the CIA?
Officially, he was called the director of security, which people think, oh, he was in charge of, checking people's IDs, going in and out of the site. But he actually worked for a group called the Security Research Staff, which was basically a covert operations group, which reported almost directly just to the head of the CIA and could be used for things where they needed deniability, where they wanted things covered up. And that fits perfectly into what he did with Watergate.
Did he serve a prison sentence for his role in Watergate?
He did. He served the shortest sentence of any of the 7 people who were sentenced because he had given the evidence. It turned out to be about 5 months in prison. And when he came out, he started his own security company, which may or may not still have had his links to the CIA. And he taught security, actually, at a junior college just outside Washington in Montgomery County. And then retired very quietly to Pennsylvania and died very, very quietly in Pennsylvania.
We're going to move on now to Leah Chase, who died recently at the age of 96. She was a cook known for her mastery of Creole cuisine, and for over 70 years she was one of the proprietors, along with her husband, one of the most legendary restaurants in New Orleans, Dookie Chase's. The restaurant was on Orleans Avenue in New Orleans, and she stayed in the kitchen well into her 90s. Here's WWL-TV New Orleans on Leah Chase from the restaurant, so the sound's a little rough.
The beloved chef reigned over the kitchen of this Orleans Avenue landmark for more than 70 years. And even well past the age of 90, there was no place she would rather be than in this kitchen.
If I wouldn't come in this kitchen every day, I think I would be miserable, and I would be miserable. And my children can't. Why not just stay home? Nope. I don't want to stay home. I want to do what I do.
Miss Leah, as nearly everyone called her, was known for telling it like it is. And what a story she had to tell. She was born on 12th night, 1923, in Madisonville. Young Leah Lang was one of 11 children. She came to New Orleans to attend Catholic school, St. Mary's Academy. Her early jobs included working as a waitress in the French Quarter, but little did she know food would be her calling. In 1946, she met and married Edgar Dookie Chase Jr., a musician whose parents had opened a small sandwich shop. Soon, Leah started working in the family business and turned Dookie Chase's into a fine dining restaurant for African Americans, which was unheard of at the time. During the 1950s and 60s, it provided a safe haven for civil rights activists, from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Thurgood Marshall to the Freedom Riders.
I fed them gumbo and fried chicken, and they met here, and we gave them space to meet. They met here. Nobody ever bothered them in here. Once they hid inside of this door, nobody was going to come in. Never, ever did a policeman come inside of this restaurant. Never.
Later, 2 U.S. presidents would dine at Dookie Chase, George W. Bush and Barack Obama. Leah Chase's cookbooks and TV appearances spread Creole cuisine worldwide. Ray Charles even sang about her restaurant.
I went to Dookie Chase to get something to eat. The way she looked at me and said, "Ray, you sure look me down."
To notice of Leah Chase's star power, the studio's first animated African-American princess, Princess Tiana, was inspired by her incredible life. In 2005, Dookie Chase is filled with 5 feet of floodwater from Hurricane Katrina's levee failures. Volunteers and friends helped the Chase family reopen 2 years later. And both Leah and Dookie Chase kept cooking and hosting customers at the restaurant well into their 80s and 90s. In 2016, some of the food world's biggest stars stood and applauded when Leah Chase earned a Lifetime Achievement Award from the James Beard Foundation. Her acceptance speech was pure Leah Chase.
I tell you, Madisonville, just look at me now. Long ways from a strawberry patch.
Well, I'm going to close on that note. I want to thank my producer and IT genius, Sid Tepps. And we're going to close tonight with Leon Redbone, who died recently at the age of 69. The enigmatic Redbone was a singer and guitar player. He frequently sported a Panama hat, and he was usually singing old-time songs from the 20s and 30s. He wasn't a big commercial success, but he had a unique style, and people as diverse as Johnny Carson, Bob Dylan, and Bonnie Raitt all loved him. Johnny would put him on the show a lot. And as a final tribute to Leon Redbone, we're going to have him singing one of his standards, Fats Waller's Ain't Misbehaving.
I want to talk with all by myself. I want to walk with, but I'm happy on the shelf. Ain't misbehaving, saving my love for you. I know for certain that when I love, I'm through with flirting, just you I'm dreaming misbehaving, saving my love for you.